He stormed out so fast, I swear the doors barely had time to swing. White robes flying, gold glasses catching the light like a threat. Everyone in that boardroom froze, British suits sweating through their collars, Thai hotel staff looking like they were about to faint. And me, I was just the janitor holding a mop in the corner. Well, used to be just the janitor. The Crystal Heights Hotel was the kind of place where the carpet was thicker than your paycheck, and the chandeliers made you feel poor just for blinking at them. That day, they were hosting some high-stakes negotiation British oil guys trying to close a deal with Sheikh Amir al-Basri, a Gulf energy billionaire with a temper as sharp as his cufflinks. I'd been mopping the same damn tile for 15 minutes, pretending not to listen, but I was clocking every word. I had to. The interpreter was butchering the Arabic, and when he turned financial guarantee into advance payment, yeah, that was it. Amir stood up like a thunderclap in human form. He spat something in furious Gulf Arabic, which no one in that room actually understood, but you could feel the insult in the air. He turned to leave, and right then something in me just snapped. Not anger, not pride. Just this deep knowing if I stayed silent, they'd all keep thinking I was invisible. So I stepped forward. "Excuse me, sir," I said in Arabic. Fluent, clear, respectfully, low. They didn't mean advance payment. What they meant was a fair guarantee, one that honors both sides. Every head turned like I'd shouted fire. The mop clinked softly as I leaned it against the wall. Amir stopped in the doorway. He looked at me like I'd just punched a hole through reality. "You speak my language?" he asked quietly now. I nodded, bowing just enough. "I lived in Muscat for 8 years. You could have heard a pin drop." Until someone behind me snorted. A British woman name tag said Claudia laughed and said, "Who let the maid into the negotiations? Thought this was for delegates, not housekeepers." A man with a watch the size of a coaster chimed in. "Maybe she's here to clean up that translator's mess." Laughter rippled. That polite, dismissive kind that stings worse than yelling. I didn't flinch, just stood straighter and said, still in Arabic, still to Amir, "Intent is the key." That shut them up. Then the hotel manager, slick hair, tight suit, zero spine, burst in and grabbed my arm. "You are way out of line, Madison. This is a billion-dollar deal. You're a janitor, not a diplomat." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Work doesn't need a title, just skill." He dragged me out anyway. But Amir didn't leave. 10 minutes later, someone came running into the service hallway, breathless, and said, "He wants you back." He said, "Let her sit." I was back in the room. They added a chair, not because anyone wanted me there, but because one man had just changed the rules. And I translated. Word for word, nuance for nuance. Kept metaphors intact, adjusted tone, made sure nobody lost face. Suddenly, the deal was back on track. And for once, nobody cared what shoes I was wearing. But that didn't stop the whispers. In the lobby, some woman in diamonds hissed, "She thinks she's a diplomat now." A concierge sneered. "Stick to your mop, honey." I smiled and said, "A mop cleans floors. What cleans arrogance?" They didn't answer. They just looked away like they'd seen something they didn't want to admit. Later that night, I turned in my name tag. Didn't scream, didn't cry, just clicked it onto the counter and walked out. That sound, that click, felt like I was closing a door, not on my job, but on every ceiling they'd ever placed above me. And the next morning, I was in a penthouse. Amir invited me up himself. There was a box on the table. Inside a formal letter, an invitation to serve as senior language advisor for the upcoming Gulf Energy Summit. He said, "You don't just translate, you understand intent. That's rare." I was quiet, but his young aide couldn't help himself. He snorted and said, "Don't get cocky. You're still just help." I looked him square in the eye. Help builds empires. What have you built? Yeah, he didn't have an answer for that. After that, it was non-stop. Press briefings, technical negotiations, room after room filled with people who still looked surprised when I walked in. And every time they tried to test me, throw in a tough legal term or a cultural landmine, I kept it clean. Not just the words, but the intent underneath. At one press event, a reporter asked, "How does a maid end up here?" I said. "Where there is language, there is value." Not the headline they wanted, but it laid a brick. Over time, people started copying the way I paused after tense phrases. The Madison beat, someone joked. I didn't laugh. It wasn't a style, it was a tool. A pause can save a room. A breath can preserve someone's pride. And once you do that, the real conversation can begin. And yes, I still carried my old notebook. Its pages filled with sketches of tone shifts, idiom maps, and quotes like, "Clean starts with respect." Eventually, I launched a small fellowship, MOP, not for mopping, for meaning over phrase. A scholarship for hotel workers who wanted to study languages. First class 6 staff members. One MOP icon drawn in the corner of the whiteboard. A year later, at a major summit, someone asked if I was just a symbol. A diversity hire, token success. I held up the notebook. You want to measure me? Measure me by the minutes, the decisions I helped shape, the tensions I diffused, the dignity I preserved. A token couldn't carry this weight. And in that moment, nobody argued. But you know what I keep thinking about? That first day when Claudia laughed when the manager grabbed me when the room almost let a billion-dollar deal fall apart because of one translation error and one prejudice. What if I had stayed quiet? What if I had believed them when they said, "Stick to your mop"? That's why I teach. That's why I still show up to the break room class every week. Because somewhere in every hotel, every boardroom, every plane, there's someone with the skill but not the permission. And the world's got enough bad translations. So, if you've ever been told to stay in your lane, if you've ever been judged by your title instead of your talent, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have spoken up or kept your head down? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if this one hit home, share it. Someone out there needs to hear that silence isn't always golden. Sometimes the right words said at the right time can change the whole room.